One minute he hates him, and the next minute he's right. And he start repeating like one-liners all the time, like a robot out of nowhere. And then he'd bash you. But they're your one-liners. I couldn't get it. I didn't understand what he was talking about.
Yeah, even my friends get confused.
Do you understand now?
Now that
About
you've
what
met
he's
Bob.
talking about?
No, what Walter was talking about.
Now that you
No, he was talking about me.
No.
You're asking, does he
You said you
understand
didn't understand what he was talking about, what Walter was talking
what
about.
Walter was talking about?
Why Walter would suddenly go from one
Yeah, that's
Bro to con.
universe to this universe
after 911.
and do so like humbly,
And then say, if I see Bob, I'll shoot him.
and then he'd bash him about something, and then next minute he'd say he's a genius about
Well,
something.
James, now do you realize why?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
question.
you understand me more now. You've been talking to me
No,
for
but
5
you
years.
realize what Walter's dilemma, he couldn't classify.
Why did Walter
Have the
Fail.
have the reality that he hated him, and then he thought he was a genius, then he hated him again? Why was these shifts happen? Do you understand? Maybe you don't. I mean,
No,
I don't know.
I only understand based upon how he started in his life, his social conditioning. He was Operation Mind Controlled. He created that whole thing.
Yeah.
And that in itself, to think that deeply about it, and then have you come along and shatter it to fucking pieces. And because it basically, you took that was his identity in a sense, his professional identity.
And he knew that, he told me in 80 when I met him, a year after, he said, I wish I'd written fiction. He knew it was a problem what he created. And I was the only guy who could give him a reason to why it was a problem and a
He told me
mistake.
before that he died, but I didn't understand what he talking about. He goes, I'm very deeply, he was very upset. He said, I need to fix what I've done.
Yeah.
This man,
But I don't know what it
And I was the
means.
only guy who could tell him how to talk about it and get past it and understand how context of why to apologize or what he missed. And he would do that in interviews. He'd always talk about his great Operation Mind Control history, and then at the end he'd go, well, I mean, it was a message. And he'd flip into McLuhan. You see this on Ted Lohman's show. He'd flip into Bob stuff right at the end.
Yeah, what is that?
Well, it's because he always wanted to one-up everybody and know more. So once they understood the Operation Mind Control after 45 minutes of hearing it explained, the last 15 minutes he'd up the end and go into, well, that's not even important. The real thing is the
he'd
meaning of
do
the message.
mental dominance. If he got mental dominance, that was fine. But if somebody came up and then
he up the ante.
he'd judo it.
And he'd eventually have to use my incomprehensible stuff in the final judo flip.
Right.
He finally win by, well, the meaning of the message, Ted, has got nothing to do with Operation Mind Control. And Ted and that other woman, they go, what? It's really, if you look at the video, they go,
Well, he
and
explained
he
it
just
to me, and
contradicted himself.
he was holding a fork and
Yeah.
trying to cook something really badly, and he was trying to explain to me why you were right and he needed to clean up his mess.
Yeah. No, he actually said that at one point.
Well, he was right. I need to fix what I've done.
When?
I said, and then
That's
when,
that
then when
month
he
ago?
explained it to
A
me,
month ago? Or
no, that
6
was
months?
like 6 months.
That's why I began by saying I killed Walter Bower. He's explaining what I meant. Because there's always a context of what I'm saying, and I've had these conversations with James for 5 years.
And I told him that some of these things were wrong that he told me, a lot of things, and he was real quiet about it. And I finally, in the last conversation, saw where his catatonic belief thing was so stuck in one area that getting out of it would have just destroyed him and his self-esteem and everything. So he had to stay in a certain area because he was kind of his work. He Operation Mind fucked himself. Badly.
Well, he was a serious intellectual, serious artist, and he valued what he did, and he knew he did something. But then he didn't know the Andrew Amin was a greater artist than any human nowadays, and he tried to wrestle it. And the first way of talking about it was the Operation Mind Control. Then he knew that language wasn't enough, and he couldn't figure out how to get another language other than using mind. But he, being a kind of lonely orphan, it had to be his language. So he'd say, yeah, it's Bob's language, but I got to get my own way of doing it. And he couldn't resolve that. So the last conversation I had with him was about a year ago. Even though I didn't want to say he was going to die, I talked to him as if he was going to die.
Yeah.
And I told him what's going to happen when he dies.
Right.
I told him all the stuff, and he seriously listened to it. I laid out all the history of the real history, according to the Evergreens, of how we were made, what the aliens were, all the things he was interested in. I laid out, must have been an hour, step by step, and he actually listened. And then we said, okay, good, I'll talk to you soon. Hung up. Found out a couple weeks later, after Walter's freaked out, that he, and James witnessed it all, that he was ranting about what an idiot Bob is. Bob's a fucking nut, you know. I tell you, you told about the Evergreens. Walter, on one part of his personality, hated the Evergreens because the Evergreens explained.
Yeah, he had to have one way to make sure that he could oust you.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
this guy believes in the Evergreens, you talk to him, he must be a total moron.
Yeah, he's not a genius. He fucked up.
Yeah, that's
Cancel from the Hall of Fame.
Where, yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
right. That's right. We're taking back your
Yeah, we're taking back my medal.
Look for one place to get him.
Yeah.
That's where it was.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the
That
Evergreens.
was his Achilles heel,
Yes.
the whole thing. I knew
Yeah.
that he'd fuck up, but I
Yeah.
talked to him seriously. I said, Walter, you've never given me a chance to tell you what they fucking actually said. See, he came in '91 to our place, and I played him the Evergreens explaining what happened to the MK Ultra program. And he couldn't take it because it showed it was all dismantled in the early '60s. And he believed blah, blah, blah. So anyways, even you might find it hard to take as your facial expression shows right now. But anyways,
No, because there's little pieces of information that would show up that would contradict stuff
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
concrete that he thought was...
It was concrete, yeah.
Right.
So I always gave him fragments through since the late '80s. I've known him for almost 30 years, so 79 up to now. But finally, I had an opportunity a year ago to say, "Shut up, Walter." I didn't say that. He just was tired and he didn't have anything to say.
Right.
So I spelled out what I always wanted to tell him in detail, the whole history of evolution and everything, and what happens when you die, blah blah blah. And he politely said, "That's interesting." I find out a week later that he went fucking nuts and accused me of fucking up, and he didn't appreciate me telling him this everything's bullshit. But he died a year later, and I bet you right now he's saying, "Fucking Bob's right. This is all happening like he said it happened."
Probably.
And that's why you guys all had a good sleep that night after he died.
Well, after he died, I slept great. I mean...
Because Walter finally said, "Shit, I now know nothing. I now know Bob was right. He now knows something."
Or I knew nothing.
Yeah, or I
So
knew not, or I'm released from it. I didn't need to know what I thought I knew. He told me in 1980 I should have written fiction. It's a year
Yeah.
after I met him. And why, Walter? And,
But again, he gave me several transcripts of either books that were on DVD or
things he was working on.
Yeah, and they, but nothing would ever get done. Like,
No, he gave you something.
well, no, he had a bunch of fiction stuff that he had written
Right.
that he gave me.
That was done.
Yeah, I had them, but they never got published, and he never did anything.
Oh, he
had
did them,
these-
but they never got out of his disc.
right.
Yeah.
Because
Never mind.
this was a guy that battled any machine.
But the process
But
is he
none of
always
the-
had to be smarter than the environment he was using. He says,
Oh.
"Okay, Bill Gates made this."
Really?
Yeah. Bill Gates made this? Okay, let's try it. This is a bunch of shit. There's no quantum computing in here. I can go from here to there.